Are you curious to know if avoidant attachment styles ever actually regret leaving relationships? See, sometimes the avoidant attachment style after a breakup can be stoic and cold and really stonewall effectively to the point where it leaves a person guessing, did they ever actually care to begin with? Well, in today's video, we are going to talk about exactly that. We're going to dive into the complexities of what it means to be an avoidant attachment style. We'll discuss how the avoidant attachment style actually copes after a relationship ending, and whether or not they may care a little more than you think, and what key signposts to look out for. Most importantly, we'll talk about what you can do if you are leaving a relationship or getting out of a relationship yourself with an avoidant attachment style so that you can embark much more quickly on your own healing journey. Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about whether or not dismissive avoidant attachment styles regret leaving relationships. So, before I tell you the answer, there's not really a clean cut answer, but more specific scenarios where this is likely to happen. So I'm going to take you through some of those very specific scenarios. Scenario number one, a dismissive avoidant, date somebody, get into the dating stage of relationships, decide, perhaps partially because of flaw finding, which is, I have other videos on this channel about, but essentially at a high level is a dismissive avoidant sometimes will look for flaws in a partner as they start to get close, because it's a subconscious strategy to avoid vulnerability and avoid feeling unsafe. And so sometimes it will be something the subconscious mind, it's not even a conscious intentional process, but the subconscious mind of a DA will use to push people away and kind of keep them at bay. And so that's a very common dynamic for dismissive avoidance. And in that case, when it's just the dating stage, they do often really invest in those flaws. Like they usually think, okay, and to be quite honest, sometimes the flaws are actual incompatibilities. So sometimes it's like, hey, this person wants something from a relationship that I don't, or we have differences that really are not like a good place to be starting dating from. But a lot of times I've seen them be really small things, but the DA is very invested in it. So I've seen people say things like, oh, the person showed up 5 minutes late, or the person, sent me this text message back with poor punctuation, or things like that. And like that's, you know, not necessarily a reasonable reason to stop dating somebody, but if somebody shows up 5 minutes late, a lot of these things are basically solvable problems, if the DA thought that they could communicate. So flaw finding can be something that whether it's a realistic reason to end a relationship or not, like you could have just said, hey, can you try to be on time more? That's important to me. And then obviously if the person was never on time and that was this huge non-negotiable, then okay, you have an incompatibility. But sometimes if there's communication, the person would make an effort and they would be on time and the relationship could continue or the dating could continue. But DAs kind of assign it like, this is not working and that's it. So it's not always the case, but it is fairly common. And in that case, when a DA is flaw finding and it's in the dating stage, often they do believe that that's like their truth. And it is their truth on some level, right? They're just prioritizing like security and not being vulnerable because that's what's worked for them. So it is their truth, but it's not necessarily like the highest expression of themselves if they were to work through it, if that makes sense. So in that case, generally DAs do not regret leaving a relationship when they do that. There's not much of an attachment formed yet. The need for security is a really big need for most DAs, pretty much all DAs. And they will want to keep that person at bay and do that and focus on themselves. So in that case, generally no. There are other cases though where DAs definitely regret leaving relationships. And one of the biggest ones is when a DA has been in a long-term relationship. I have yet to see an exception to this, where a DA has been in a long-term relationship, meaning like, more than a couple of years. And through that long-term relationship, whether it was long distance, whether it was close, sometimes at the beginning, usually at the beginning, dismissive avoidance will get out of that relationship because of common themes, fear of vulnerability, the relationship just not working, maybe a difference in attachment style, some of these common things we see. But generally also a huge one is that they don't know how to communicate their needs from a partner. So even though the partner, if they are with somebody who's more anxiously attached, that partner may be trying to show up so much and meet their needs, but sometimes they're not meeting like the right needs because the DA is not communicating their truth. And the reason the DA doesn't communicate their needs is because they usually don't have any modeling or conditioning to even believe that a relationship is supposed to be something interdependent. In other words, something where we mutually exchange our needs being met. And so DAs often sometimes feel like unseen, misunderstood. They don't know how to open themselves a lot of the time to receive from other people or to express what they need to receive. And so they just stay super self-reliant, which kind of stops them from really deeply attaching. And then, when their partner's like, hey, I have needs, they can feel like, well, wait, why am I supposed to meet your needs? Like, we're just supposed to be on our own and then have a nice time together and hang out and have fun. And that's it. And so sometimes there can be like a little bit of confusion there at one level. But when a long-term relationship ends for a DA, the most common by far pattern that I see is that a dismissive avoidant feels the relationship end, immediately feels free, feels the sense of like freedom, like from their fears of the relationship, from vulnerability, from feeling trapped or different core wounds being triggered around like commitment fears, things of that nature. And then usually about like 6 weeks to 3 months later, depending on how much this person's trying to repress their feelings, they start really hurting. And part of it is that they're mourning like the comfort and security of a relationship. And those are usually generally very high needs for a dismissive avoidant that they don't realize they're getting from that relationship on some level. But also because there's like this space that takes place where originally DAs get really good at repressing their emotions, but they can only do that for so long. And then eventually some of these things come online and they generally start to feel like really lonely and disconnected, and then don't really know how to reach out to people to soothe through others. So it's almost like that feeling of loneliness, or, like their needs not being met, and that loss and that grieving can almost be like this extended grief period because there aren't really sources or strategies or resources they use very effectively to let other people in to help fill that void. So if you look at traditional breakups, like let's say two securely attached people break up, what do you see? They go to friends, they go to family, they spend more time with other people. It's helping to sort of like heal up that void a little bit of what's been lost through that person who was meeting those needs. But in the DA context, they generally like won't get emotional needs met from other relationships, won't open up and be vulnerable. And even if they weren't fully vulnerable in their romantic relationship and they were still keeping things at bay, at least there was something there. Whereas like, that's not something they generally try to do in other relationships. And what I find a lot too, is that dismissive avoidance will get a lot of like intellectual needs met, like comfort, security, fun, harmony, intellectual connection from people like friends, family members, but emotional connection is almost something that's parked and compartmentalized. And so sometimes there's an element of emotional connection that happens in romantic relationships that when that's gone, it feels like that void lasts for so long. And so I've very often seen dismissive avoidance when they've been in more long-term relationships have these like extended grieving processes in a breakup. And by the way, I'll tell you really quick as well, if you are going through this, and I'm going to say one other thing after this as well, but if you're going through this and you want to just work through a breakup, go for the How to Heal for a Breakup course. So I have some exciting news, which is that we are doing $1,000 off of our lifetime membership sale to the Personal Development School, which means you get access to literally everything at PDS for your entire rest of your life. Essentially, that entails all of our different courses you have lifetime access to. I do 4 live webinars a week, every single week. You can access them ongoing, and you get access to all of our daily community events. So I'd love to see you on the other side, and you can access it by using the link in the description box below. So the other thing I'll say too is that when dismissive avoidants go through this extending grieving process, which is quite common after long-term relationships, is that they won't let anybody see it. Like a lot of the time, like you won't know. If you're the ex, you won't know. If you are they may reach out indirectly and say like, hey, how are you? Or something like that. But they're not sharing with the ex, right? They're not sharing with their friends and family. Like they're fine, but sometimes they're actually going through something more privately because they don't feel comfortable or safe, or they give it painful meaning like, oh, I'm weak, or I'm shameful if I share with people that I'm actually hurting over the breakup, or that I made a mistake because I pushed the person away, that maybe now I kind of regret pushing away. And so, they may keep that private and you may not really see it, but I can't tell you how many times in my client practice I would see dismissive avoidance and they would be really hurting over a breakup. And I'd be like, who do you go to? Like, who do you share with? Who do you talk to about this? And they'd be like, I come here, I don't really tell anybody else. Or they would come to me after like being in that state for like 3 months, 4 months, and then be like, I don't know what to do. I've just been stuck in this like really bad feeling. So my heart goes out to anybody who's going through that. Other attachment styles obviously go through their own versions of that and that grieving process. But once we understand the mechanics of grief, it's so much easier to move through it a little bit better and quicker. Anyways, I hope this all makes sense. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you hang out here sometimes, if you enjoy the content. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video, which will be tomorrow. So have a great day and let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions about this process as a whole.